Tonight, we are following a number of developing stories very much about how radical this moment is in our country right now. Just in the last hour, we, for example, have had important breaking news out of the United States Supreme Court. The court's conservative majority has granted an emergency request from the state of Alabama to discriminate against black voters, to allow the state of Alabama to use a Republican-backed map that deliberately eliminates one of the state's two majority black districts. This will, in terms of electoral politics, this will almost certainly gain Republicans another House seat. It will further reduce black representation in Congress. This, of course, comes in the wake of the High Court gutting the Voting Rights Act. Sonia Sotomayor penned a pretty intense dissent to this decision tonight. I'll just read a little bit of it to you. She says, "Before the court are two paths. Down one lies an orderly election held under a tried and tested congressional map that protects black Alabamians' right to vote and with which all voters, elections officials, and candidates alike are familiar. Down the other lies a chaotic election held under a never-before-used congressional map that intentionally discriminates against black Alabamians, that Alabama adopted in unashamed defiance of a prior court order directly affirmed by this court, and that will require officials, listen to this, will require officials to change the voter registrations of hundreds of thousands of voters in just days at best, a task that Alabama previously represented would take months. The majority chooses the second path and disregards both democratic values and the rule of law. I respectfully dissent." Again, that news out of the Supreme Court just within the last hour. This is an election special, and we have so much election news to cover tonight.
All right, that's why we're
But
here.
I'm just going to call an audible here. Can we just talk about this for a second? I just love to get your guys' reaction to some of this news tonight, Chris.
I'm going to swing at one of these two pitches, which is the Supreme Court decision, which I've really had a few moments today of being kind of brought up short and speechless. And I'm trying to describe, I mean, one of the things with all these cases is the procedural ins and outs can get very complicated. It's like this map, and then it got stopped in the lower court. But I think the best way to understand it is this is so cynical and depraved and insane. It's the court's equivalent of nominating Bill Pulte to run the intelligence apparatus, in that when you do that, you're not pretending anymore. When you say Bill Pulte is going to run the intelligence agencies, yes, you're like, you've lost. You're no longer trying to be like, well, no, this is a bald-faced attempt to manipulate the levels of power for corrupt ends. And what the court has done tonight, and again, I could spend a long time going through the procedural stances of this, but fundamentally what happened was this map, this court rejected in 2023. They said this is not permissible.
And why was it not permissible?
Because it intentionally discriminates against black voters. Mm-hmm. And then they overturned their previous jurisprudence in the Calais with Louisiana's map, but they said, they made a point of saying in the majority, we are not overturning our decision in Milligan, which is the Alabama case. That still stands. Mm-hmm. And then tonight, after a lower court said, whatever the Voting Rights Act says, this is unconstitutional. It is constitutionally impermissible to discriminate against black people in this country, these United States, with our Constitution. And the court said, no, actually, you can. Yeah. And it's a truly shocking. And the response from lawyers, again, you keep hitting new lows. See prior Bill Pulte comments.
Yeah.
Even people who are pretty hardened about this court find this particular decision tonight from this court truly
just
shocking.
just to be clear, I mean, I don't want to interview you about this, Chris, but just to be clear, I feel like when we have these voting rights discussions, a lot of it we have to sort of nod to the fact that there are euphemisms, that there are pretexts, that there are explanations for these things that make these maps sort of not what they obviously are, according to the way these things are being discussed in court. In this case, the United States Supreme Court said this map intentionally disenfranchises black Americans on the basis of the fact that they are black.
Correct.
This is not like a partisan effort. This is not like an effort to make prettier districts. Like, this is literally about making sure that black people can't exercise political power because they're black people. And that's their own finding. And on the basis of that finding, with that being their own understanding of this court, they said, go ahead and do it.
This court. Yeah, it's really very difficult. And the last thing I would just say is that, like, I do think it is election night, and it just highlights the stakes across the board, because it will be the United States Senate that will or will not confirm judges for the rest of Donald Trump's term in office, including Supreme Court justices, should they choose to retire, having the Republicans secure a majority. And finding a 28-year-old version of Sam Alito that makes Sam Alito look like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So, all of that, everything that we see right now is on the table tonight in these elections.
Simone.
Well, elections, also this matters. This ties to November, to our election night story as well tonight, because state legislatures, not only are they the place in America where America's policy is made, but elections are administered by the states in this country, not the White House or the federal government, as the president would like to pretend, frankly. And so who is in the state legislature matters. What the state legislatures are willing to do or not to do, what they are willing to defend and not defend, what the attorney general of those states and the governors are willing to do, it matters. I've been saying this a lot. I will repeat it again. I believe we are in another post-Reconstruction moment in America. After Reconstruction collapsed in 1877, 1878, because it didn't happen overnight, okay? Okay, like it's not happening overnight right now. The 14th and 15th Amendments, they were never repealed, okay? They were still on the books. The Constitution was still on the books after Reconstruction. But the promise of democracy for millions of Americans were not. It took 88 years from the collapse of Reconstruction to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 for even a semblance of those rights to be restored in this country. And so what is happening right now happened after Reconstruction. The courts aided and abetted in dismantling the promises of Reconstruction. There are a slew of Supreme Court cases post-1878 that basically said, oh, poll taxes, it's okay because they say it's not about race. Oh, citizen tax? Oh, this is political. It's not about race. So on and so forth. Just like now, the map that they said was racist, that was about race in 2023, all of a sudden it's just partisan, so we're going to let it go. So we don't have another 88 years. And that is why tonight, the people going to the polls all across the country, that is why this November matters.
So I'm going to channel my colleague Simone for a moment. In 1896...
Come on, Michael Steele.
There was a little case called Plessy versus Ferguson, in which the Supreme Court ruled that segregation was okay under our Constitution, under the 14th Amendment. Put a pin in that. Now you sort of draw the lines to all the periods in our history, the battles that took down, ultimately, Reconstruction, the battles that raised up the Civil Rights era, and now the battles that are taking that down. And how are they taking it down? They're taking it down systematically. They're taking it down through media, they're taking it down through government, and they're taking it down through culture. What's the end game? The end game was not Obergefell. It was not the abortion decision. It's the amendments of the Constitution. The First Amendment is a pain in this Supreme Court's butt, and a whole lot of other folks out there. But you know which one really bites the hardest? The 14th Amendment. That's the end game. And they're setting the trap that they're laying down, this court, laying down to, at some point with the case that is being germinated right now, somewhere in the south of this great country, that's going to make its way through, in which they say to the American people, guess what? All the rights you thought you had under the 14th Amendment no longer carry. How does that tie into Scott Pelley? Because it ties back to the First Amendment. It ties back to the only industry, business, interest in this country that is mentioned in the Constitution. And the moment you can deconstruct that and take that piece out by controlling the press and controlling the narratives, guess what stories they're going to write when they take out the 14th Amendment? And the people wind up losing across the board. And that's why nights like this, to Simone's point, is important, to all of the points made, because the voters need to understand what's really happening here and what November is just not a midterm election. It is probably a terminal election.
This is, I mean, everybody always says, every election is like, the most important. Like once you're in the throes of this sort of a revolution, we are in the throes of a revolution to change our form of government and to get rid of our Constitution. And when that is actively happening and progressing every day, the next Democratic shot you get might be the only one.
Yeah, you got it.
Right.
You get.